Wake up! Wake up, wake up, wake up!
Good morning, Vietnam!
Hello there.
What's happening?
I feel the need for speed. Ow! Warriors, come to play!
Here's Johnny!
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Cinemateq live stream. It is Wednesday, September 7th? Yeah, probably. More importantly, it is Tifmas Eve. Tomorrow marks the beginning of the Toronto International Film Festival, and I'm very excited for that. I'm going to be attending it as press for the very first time. I'm going to be watching upwards of 40, 45, 47 movies. It all depends. I'm actually a little bit scared now because I'm realizing that I may not be able to get into some of these press screenings that I have in my schedule, and I've sort of sold myself a little bit short by not getting more real screenings that I have proper tickets to. So that's going to be interesting. I'm going to see at least 10 films for sure. And if I don't get into any press screenings for like 9 days straight, it'll be just those 10 films that I end up seeing, and it's going to be very strange. But I'm still going to give it a go. Going to give it my best shot. I'm going to stand in line for all of you guys. Hello, Eli. Hello, Panda. How are you doing? Welcome to the live stream, as I said. Initially, I was going to start things off with a little bit of voting stuff. I will say to you people who are here right now that the final ballot for the Archive of Excellence 2002 voting is now available. It is linked in the description box below. You can go fill out that ballot right now. I am going to be filling out my ballot later in the live stream. I think I'm going to do that. I'm definitely going to do that. I'm looking at my ballot right now. But in the meantime, why don't we talk about some of the film news that has been hitting the headlines today? There has been a bit of it. Today has been a good day for film news. So the first one that I'm going to start off with is TIFF related, TIFF adjacent. You may or may not have heard that the Toronto International Film Festival has had some ticketing problems over the last couple of days. It all kind of came to a head maybe 2 or 3 days ago when press started to try and get their tickets for actual in-person screenings. The way that this system is supposed to work is that press have unlimited access to press screenings, but then they also get 20 individual tickets for 20 different individual screenings subject to availability, right? So when I mentioned before that I'm at least going to 10 films for sure, that's what I was talking about. Those are the 10 films that I was able to get tickets for. And when it came time for members of the press in order to buy their tickets, some were having some pretty severe problems. In some cases, they were getting onto the website to go buy the tickets and then discovering that they couldn't, and excuse me, I said buy, but buy is not correct. These are still free tickets, essentially, for the press. They found that they couldn't actually select anything, that there were no lists being populated, nothing to show them the films that they had available to them. I was able to navigate the website and find how to do it. And I guess since I have experience with TIFF's nonsense before, it didn't affect me. It was obvious that it was affecting some other people. And I think some of the issue stems from the fact that TIFF set up their website a little bit strangely. I don't know if any real reporting or coverage on this has actually happened, but if you actually, and maybe I can just demonstrate this to you guys a little bit better. If you were to go to tiff.net, beforehand you would click on tickets, right? And you would get this thing right here. And there used to be one other option. So you can see here it says I want to buy or manage in-person tickets for TIFF 2022, or I want to buy tickets for TIFF 2022 digital screenings. Up until yesterday, there was a third option here that said I'm a member of the press and I want to go do press stuff, right? And I don't think I have access to that here. Actually, let me bring this up in my other browser. Hold on. Because my no, it's gone from there as well. Okay, so when I signed in, you had that third option to click on it and be like, yeah, I'm a member of the press. Let me get those tickets. I want those juicy, juicy press tickets. And it would take you to a particular screen, and then you had to click on another screen to get to another screen. And eventually that's where you were able to get it. However, if you look like closely at the URLs that you were on, there was a couple of different ones that you could get to depending on how you decided to access the site. There was like TIFF2 and TIFF4, I think. And another member of the press who writes for the Underscene pointed this out to me when I was having a bit of trouble. And I think that maybe people were just getting to the wrong website, and that was the thing that was messing them up. So then TIFF kind of announced that they were doing this thing where your press voucher, or excuse me, if you weren't able to get all of your films, you then had to say, okay, and I'll take the rest of them in vouchers. So I have 10 vouchers still. So I could potentially go to 10 more screenings for sure if I want to. And so they, I guess, just took that system and just said to everyone, this is how we're going to fix the problem. You now just have like these 10 vouchers that you can exchange instead of using those initial 20 set aside tickets to get the tickets. So they just sort of used their own systems in order to fix it, but I don't think they actually fixed anything. It was a very weird way that they went about it. Hello to Fernanda. Hello to Tom. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm just recounting some TIFF weirdness with their ticketing. Several members of the press, not myself, but several other people got quite screwed over by the ticketing problems. And it's really not that interesting, but it was definitely a thing on film Twitter. Like, basically, if you follow any kind of, I don't want to look at that yet. If you follow any kind of like film personality, like film critic on Twitter, they were either saying like, whew, good thing I got my TIFF tickets, or they were saying, God damn it, TIFF, every year this fucking happens. Why haven't you fixed it yet? And a lot of that issue has to do with the fact that it's Ticketmaster that handles it. Ticketmaster handles their ticketing system, and it's just never really been improved. It's changed, certainly, but it has not improved. And that, is just no good. And TIFF really, I think, needs to decide whether or not they want to continue on with Ticketmaster, although I think maybe they may not have a choice. Good thing it didn't happen to you. Yeah, I'm pretty stoked that didn't happen to me. Although I will say that, I did have a couple of issues, right? Like, first of all, the first issue was the fact that I forgot how to read, or that I should read things. There was something in the instructions that said, like, you must actually, like, tick the ticker up on, like, whatever screening you want to get from 0 to 1 ticket. But in my mind, I was like, well, we're only allowed to get 1 ticket per screening anyways. So I'm just going to click on these things and be like, yeah, I want that movie, that movie, that movie, that movie, that movie. And then when I got to the end, I realized that everything that I had selected hadn't really selected because I hadn't ticked it to 1, right? Which sucks. So I had to go back through and redo all of it. And in that time period, I initially lost out on a ticket to see The Eternal Daughter and Hunt, I believe. Yeah, I lost out on seeing both of those. So instead of seeing The Eternal Daughter, I was going to see Biosphere, the new Duplass Brothers film, or at least the new film that the Duplass Brothers are involved in, or one of the Duplass Brothers. It's a Duplass film of some sort. And I kind of had to just be happy with that. I only ended up getting the 9 tickets. And then the next day, I found out about this thing that they were doing with the voucher, so I went back on. I noticed that the screening of Hunt that I wanted to go to, and this is the film that stars Lee Jung-jae from Squid Games, and also directed by him. I noticed that my screening, or the screening that I wanted to go to, wasn't actually being listed in like the big list of whatever. And I went over to like the ticket purchasing portal that the public uses, and saw that film still had tickets on sale. So I called TIFF and was on hold with them for like an hour and 20 minutes. Finally got a hold of somebody, and then I'm like, hey, can I just use one of my press vouchers to get tickets to this one film that's not appearing on the press site? And they were like, oh yeah, for sure. And I was like, cool. And then I think I noticed that there were public tickets still available for The Eternal Daughter, so I just asked also on the phone if they could swap my Biosphere ticket with Eternal Daughter, and they just did that, and I was basically done. And I had all the films that I wanted to get. So it all kind of worked out in the end, and my experience was weird. I did have that, waiting on the phone for an hour with TIFF people trying to figure everything out, but it all worked out. It's all fine. Everything's good. So I'm seeing at least 10 movies, and then maybe I'm seeing 45. Going to be a lot. It's going to really depend on some of these press screenings and how many people decide to go to them. Really counting on a lot of the international press leaving Toronto after probably by Tuesday, I would hope. Because there aren't a lot of big films getting their first screenings after that. Or if they did, they would have been at other festivals already, like The Sun or something like that. But we shall see, fingers crossed. Eli, what? Wait, what? Gesundheit. Wait, what movie with Duplass brothers? Yeah, so the Duplass brothers, or at least one of the Duplasses, I think it's Mark Duplass, has a new film called Biosphere that was announced as like a surprise film at TIFF. Like, it was added very last minute, and I'm not really sure why it was, but it was. Wait, I know that he's in the movie. Why isn't it listed here? Executive producer only. What the heck? Oddly enough, and I need to investigate this a little bit more, but it appears that the movie is not that similar or not that dissimilar from... Wait, is this the right? Biosphere, Michael Z. Gordon. I don't know if this is the right one. Oh, no. All right, maybe the TIFF website is just the easiest one to go to. So there's another film in the festival called Viking that may have a similar kind of... yeah, there he is, Mark Duplass. And Sterling K. Brown as well. Woo! In the not-too-distant future, the last two men on Earth must adapt and evolve to save humanity. Presented as a special surprise screening at TIFF, Biosphere is a directorial debut of award-winning producer Mel Eslin and produced by the Duplass brothers. And I believe that Mel Eslin is the producer who handles most of the Duplass brother releases. So they've always been working together. You can see the production company is the Duplass Brothers Productions, and I believe that's the one that Mel Eslin is kind of in charge of. And so I guess they produced this film. Looks kind of good. I did have a ticket for it, but I don't anymore because seeing The Eternal Daughter is way more important to me. Who knows? With the way things go, I may end up at a screening of this. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, this is Biosphere. I'm interested in this. And yeah, the other film I was talking about that's somewhat similar to this is a Canadian film called Viking. See, got those sci-fi vibes. The latest from Stéphane Lafleur balances absurdist humor with poignant reflection on a human condition as it follows the subjects of behavioral research and the astronauts they mirror in the advance of the first manned mission to Mars. So I guess the fact that there are people in this who are isolated, that's really what I'm sort of grasping onto and saying it's kind of similar to Biosphere, but I don't know anything about the future that that is in Biosphere. Maybe it's a zombie apocalypse and they're not telling anybody. Who knows? Ooh, that looks good. Yeah. The trailer for this is out. I would suggest going to take a look at it. It looks pretty. It looks very pretty. I'm excited for this one. I do have this one in my schedule, thankfully. All right, so it looks like we got a few more people in here. So have you seen Creep with Mark Duplass? I have. I saw it Halloween evening many a moon ago with some friends. It was decent. It was a decent film. All right, so now that we've got some more people in here, I will remind you that the Archive of Excellence 2022 final ballot is now available for you to fill out, linked in the description box below. And I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to hem and I'm going to ha, and I'm going to make very tough decisions because you guys nominated some very good movies. I mean, we all nominated some very good movies. And if you'd like to follow along with me, please do. Once again, link in the description. So, best film pre-20th century, basically 1899 and before. We have The Astronomer's Dream, The House of the Devil, both by Méliès. The Muybridge Experiment, The Tables Turned on the Gardener, which is the Gardener movie that I showed you guys before, and Train Pulling Into a Station, both of those by the Lumiere brothers. And this one's kind of difficult, right? Because you have with The Tables Turn on the Gardener, basically the first film that was a story. And then The Movie Bridge Experiment, which was basically the first film, although not really a film. It was just, like I said, an experiment. And then you have Train Pulling in a Station, which is an infamous film because it apparently made people run away from screens. And then you have two films by Méliès, which also would have had to do with, you know, some of the first uses of special effects, some of the first uses of horror. The House of the Devil is considered one of the first, if not the first, horror film ever made. So there's a lot going on here. I think even maybe The Astronomer's Dream was a prelude to A Trip to the Moon, although I'm not quite sure on that. For me, I'm probably going to pick Tables Turn on the Gardener because it is so significant in terms of it being like the first film with a story, a beginning, middle, and end. Obviously, Train Pulling into the Station is iconic, but I think this one's going to be The Tables Turn on the Gardener for me, although I could easily see it going to another film. And I may come back and change that. I'm going to think on that one a little bit. This time, I will not miss voting. All right, Fernanda. Now's your chance. And, like, I'm not sure when the actual cutoff date for this is going to be. I haven't really decided yet. I know that I'm not going to want to have anything to do with it for the next, like, 12 days because of TIFF. So you've got at least until, like, the 20th, I would say. I warned everybody about the possibility of Bardo disappointing. Nobody believed me until now. Yeah, but it got like a 6-minute standing ovation in Venice, so you know it can't be that bad. No, I've heard that Bardo isn't that great, but I'm reserving my opinion until I actually see it. All right, let's move on to best film from 1900 to 1909. In this one, for me, there's just one very obvious film. All the nominees are A Trip to the Moon by Méliès, The Great Train Robbery by Porter, The Red Spectre by Zicka and Decamont, and The Story of the Kelly Game by Tate. This is obviously A Trip to the Moon. I mean, there is no more iconic film from this time period. I will one day have a tattoo dedicated to A Trip to the Moon on my body somewhere. So yeah, it's A Trip to the Moon for me. I don't know about y'all. Oh, and the great thing about like some of these first few categories, like you can just go watch these on YouTube. They're there. They're available. You know, they'll probably only be like 2 minutes long. You could have watched all of these by the time that I started started talking about it, right? So yeah, there you go. I'm reserving my opinions on Bardo too because I think critics and pundits went in with their knives out given the controversies. I'm open to liking it, let alone loving it. Yeah, I mean that could be a possibility as well. I'm trying to think like how well people like stuff coming out of Venice as well, because I think that the critics that go to Venice, like they were mostly pretty high on Joker as an example, and then the North American, or at least the North American based critics who don't travel, you know, they pretty much eviscerated Joker by the time it landed over here. So I guess yeah, there are some instances where maybe a film gets a good or bad first start at Venice, and then it doesn't pan out over the course of the film's release. So we're just gonna have to wait. We're just gonna have to wait and see. Like I said, I won't be voting for I haven't seen all of the films, so it would not be the right thing to do. Tom, I say do it. I say vote. You know, I haven't seen all of these. I've seen quite a few of them, but you know, I haven't seen a lot of these. I just know that Trip to the Moon, as an example, is sick. So I'm gonna vote for that one. Watching Bardo get mediocre to bad reviews reminds me of Last Night in Soho getting mediocre to bad reviews. Bad reviews? Really? Because I thought Last Night in Soho, it was more a general air of like disappointment. Whereas I don't know if people are so much disappointed with Bardo, but think it's too... I did hear it described as being like a 3-hour film that feels like an 8-hour film. Like it really drags. And I don't think I would say the exact same thing about Last Night in Soho. So I don't know if it's going to be a 1-to-1 on that. The Banshees of Inisherin reviews have me really excited. Yeah. I mean, 12-minute standing ovation ain't nothing. It's not the longest, but it ain't nothing. So let's move on to 1910 to 1919. And by the way, just for clarity on this, we've got 7 films maximum per category. And in the case where like the 7th place film and the 8th place film were tied for 7th, they were both knocked off the ballot and we only got 6, which was the case here for 1910 to 1919. In the case for these ones, there were films that were tying for like, fifth, sixth, whatever, but in my personal view, they didn't gain enough votes in order to qualify. Like in some cases, they only got like one second place vote, and that's it. So I decided to keep it to the films that really had received multiple votes from several different people, and once again, ties potentially knocking some films out, which is why we have ties for seventh, essentially knocking some films out, which is why we only have 6 films here, but we have seven films in 1920 and 1929, and that kind of continues all the way down. There was also an interesting case that came up that I kind of had to think through. There was going to be a category where one of the Charlie Brown specials was going to be nominated. It had received a few different votes, but it's a television special, and not even like a television film. Like it's a television half-hour special. So I felt that disqualified it. So I removed it and then re-ranked based on that. However, you can obviously look back to here, and there are a number of films on here that are short, certainly not feature length, and you'll see that once again when we come up to 1920 and 1929, the inclusion of Steamboat Willie. My logic for that is that these films, while short and while not all being feature length, were all made to be shown in a theater, or were all exhibited in a theater upon or around their initial release. So that's why I've kept them in. And also, when you go back far enough in time, like they just weren't making feature-length films. So that's my reasoning. Let's see. Tom is looking forward to The Whale, Triangle of Sadness, and Babylon. The Banshees of Inisherin, they were very good in Bruges. Yeah, I'm excited for those as well. I'm looking forward to Bardo, just to have my own opinion, but the ones I'm hyped for are Women Talking and The Whale. Women Talking, I'm so hyped for, man. Oh my god. All right, let's do 1910 to 1919. So this is going to be difficult. The nominees are A Dog's Life by Chaplin, Cabiria by Pastron, Cleopatra by Edwards, Dante's Inferno by Logoro, Bertoloni, and Padovan, Intolerance by Griffith, and The Rink by Chaplin. I think for this, I'm going to throw my lot in with Cabiria. I have seen Intolerance, but I just don't want to give Griffith anything. And also, just for another bit of clarity or transparency, I've said before on this live stream and on this channel that I think Griffith is a racist piece of shit. Intolerance, I don't think is inherently a racist film, although I can't quite remember. But obviously, his film Birth of a Nation is. If that film had ended up being nominated, I just would have removed it. That doesn't need to go. That doesn't need to go into the archive of excellence. And also, there's a couple of Chaplin films that you can pick here, so it's all good. I probably should have seen Dante's Inferno by now. It sounds kind of cool. Might be up my alley. But yeah, for this one, I'm going to pick Cabiria. I have seen that film. It's quite epic, quite fun. Good stuff all around in that, so I'm happy with that pick overall. Let's see. Just finished the movie I mentioned earlier. Holy shit, I take it back. It isn't one of the worst movies ever made. It is the worst movie I've ever seen. Are you talking about Indiana Jones 4, Eli? I can't quite remember. All right, let's talk about 1920 and 1929. And if you guys are doing this and following along with me, you got to tell me what you're voting for. Or not. I mean, it's an anonymous ballot. The Darkness. I don't think I've seen The Darkness. I know there's a band called The Darkness. Is that the same thing? Is it a movie about the band The Darkness? All right, 1920 and 1929. This is when it starts getting really hard. I mean, not this one, but this, I think, is when it's going to start getting hard for more people. So you've got The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, directed by Wine, can't remember which. The General, directed by Buster Keaton and Bruckman. Man with the Movie Camera, directed by Dziga Vertov. Metropolis, directed by Lang. Nosferatu, directed by Murnau. Passion of Joan of Arc, directed by Dreyer. And Steamboat Willie, directed by Disney/Lewis. And I mean, for me, it's Passion of Joan of Arc. I don't really have anything else to add to this. I know that there are a number of influential films here. Caligari, Nosferatu, and Metropolis. Both extremely important German films, part of German Expressionism. Man with the Movie Camera, big film in terms of Soviet montage. The General is one of the all-time best silent films ever made. But I think Passion of Joan of Arc is a cut above. I think the acting in that film is unparalleled. I think some of the camera movements, the way that the scenes are set is, you could look at it right now and say that, oh, that may have been made today with the way that it was shot. And the fact that he made it in 1928 is just unreal. So I'm picking Passion of Joan of Arc. Modern horror movie that is just as bad in every aspect. I know modern horror films are bad, but oh boy, this one is bad. Speaking of modern horror, though, that new one, shit, what's the name? The one with the Airbnb. Oh God, what is it called? Box Office Mojo will tell me. It's coming out this weekend. I won't be able to see it until after the fest. Barbarian. I have heard tremendous things about Barbarian. There's actually a preview screening of it happening in Toronto tonight that I won't be attending, but I've heard that Barbarian is really good. Like a really good example of what a modern horror film should be. So I'm really excited to check that one out when it eventually hits. First time watches since the last video. Little Children, Little Man What Now, Santa Sangria, and Gleaming the Cube. Is Gleaming the Cube like a film from the Cube series? Probably not. I also rewatched Max Keeble's Big Move. It was such a great throwback. Right on. 80s and 90s voting was so difficult when I did it the other day. I wanted to see this movie when I saw the trailer while seeing Nope in theaters. Oh, for the one I was just talking about? Barbarian? Yeah, Barbarian looks sick. I think the films with Harold Lloyd are extremely underrated. I would put Safety Last among these top films from the 10s and 30s you've mentioned. Yeah, Safety Last is interesting because that is Harold Lloyd, right? Because in my mind, and it's like a bad thing to do, I'm just going to double check this before I comment on it further. Yeah, in my mind, for whatever reason, I always assume that Safety Last is a Chaplin film. Like I always assign it to him in my mind, and I know that I shouldn't. I know that. But I always end up doing it. And I'm going to try to not do that from now on. Why am I yawning? Yeah. Gleaming the Cube is a neo-noir film about a skateboarder investigating the death of his adopted Vietnamese brother, starring Christian Slater. What? What? That sounds wild. Just thought of something you could be doing to your content. Why don't you do film talks? What do you mean by film talks? Like interviews? Deep dives into single films? Like what do you mean? What do you mean? For those of us who are just joining, I am filling out my Archive of Excellence Ballot. It is linked in the description box below. Please do it as your leisure, and while you're down there, please like the video. Okay, time to pick what I think the best film from 1930 to 1939 is. The nominees are City Lights by Chaplin, Frankenstein by Whale, Gone with the Wind by Fleming, The Invisible Man by Whale, Modern Times by Chaplin, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs by Hand and a bunch of other people, and The Wizard of Oz by Fleming. And also, I just want to give a shout out to Fleming here. Dude did The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind in the same year. That's wild. Like, 1939 is considered one of the best film years of all time, largely because of these two movies getting released. I did not know that they were directed by the same person. I guess I just didn't know that particular piece of trivia. But yeah, I had no idea they were directed by the same person. Absolutely wild. Also, shout out to this category for having 3 sets of doubles. 2 films by Chaplin and 2 films by Whale. So, this particular category, this is going to get me heat maybe. I'm going to have to go with Frankenstein. Frankenstein, out of all of these, is my favorite. And I think if you were to watch it back, it is an incredibly awesome, super duper cool film. The theme of this, it plays very much into World War I. The idea of people being broken down in individual pieces, not really being the same anymore, shell shock. There's actually quite a bit of war imagery in the very beginning. The ending where, or not the ending, but like the sequences where Frankenstein is brought to life, those have some very like incredible cinematography. Acting is great. The moment when Frankenstein throws the girl in the lake is kind of funny, so that's cool. Yeah, Frankenstein. It's got to be that one. And I know there's probably a lot of other films here that people would point to and say, oh, that's clearly better. In fact, I'm sure there are people who are looking at all of these and saying that Frankenstein is the weakest among them. But I disagree. I think that film is incredible. And once again, to all the people who are joining us, hello. Thank you for joining. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and please like the live stream if you haven't yet. I'm filling out my Archive of Excellence 2022 ballot. You can fill that out you can find the ballot linked in the description box below. Let's go back to the chat. The author Peter Straub just died. Yeah, I saw stuff about that. The people were lamenting it because he apparently wrote a horror book or novel or something that is quite well known and like really disturbed a lot of kids when they were growing up. But I can't say that I'm familiar with his work personally. Top Gun was #1 at the box office, which means the prediction you made about Maverick starting and ending the summer #1 was correct. Pretty cool for that movie, IMO. Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're kind of just waiting for confirmation that Top Gun 3 is going ahead, right? Like, there's no way that Paramount is looking at that and saying to themselves, yeah, I think 2 Top Gun movies is enough. Like, no. Like, if Tom Cruise no longer wants to do Mission Impossible films after Dead Reckoning Part 2, why not just get him to do Top Gun for the rest of his career? That's probably what Paramount is pitching to him right now. There's no way that they walk away from a potential billion-dollar franchise. I mean, it's already a billion-dollar franchise. The film has grossed so much goddamn money, it's ridiculous. Kind of having other 2 or 3 sharing the views on some subject. It can already be what you discuss on your lives. I only believe this is something viewers could come to watch later. Oh, so Tom, you're basically talking about like a video podcast where I like chat with people about movies, right? Is that kind of what you're talking about? There are some photos of Babylon released today. Oh, really? We'll check that out in a little bit. But first, we have to decide what is the best film from 1940 to 1949, or rather, I have to. First up, the Italian film Bicycle Thieves by De Sica. Then we got Casablanca by Curtis, Citizen Kane by Wells, Fantasia by Algar, and a whole lot of other people. It's a Wonderful Life by Capra, Pinocchio by Lusk, and a whole bunch of other people, and The Red Shoes by Powell and Pressburger. So for this one, for me, it really comes down to either Casablanca or Citizen Kane. I know that Bicycle Thieves is hugely influential as one of the first films of Italian neorealism, and that was one of the most influential film movements of all time. But there's something about the cult status of Casablanca that just kind of makes me love it. And then there's just Citizen Kane by itself being like, you know, one of the best films ever made. I will admit that I have not seen The Red Shoes, and I know that I should have by now, and like having seen it might sway me on this, but I kind of have to go by just what I've seen, right? So the best thing I can do here is maybe go with, I think I just go with Citizen Kane. It's kind of safe. But I feel like out of the films that I want to go into the Archive of Excellence, I think I think Citizen Kane makes a lot of sense. And there's always next year for a lot of the other films, right? The poster for The Fabelmans was released too. Actually, yeah, that's something we're going to talk about in a bit. Actually, we can talk about it right now. There it is. Look at that. I had that all queued up and ready to go. Oh, this is funny here. Tom saying about this poster, and it is horrible. As a graphic designer, I feel offended for the lack of imagination, and it's a movie about a man with a lot of it. Yeah, it is kind of just multiple stills of the film, kind of up here or whatever. You do get to see Seth Rogen right here up in the top right-hand corner, and I believe he's meant to play the Spielberg character in this. We also have Paul Dano right here. With a monkey in his hair doing something. I don't know what. I can't even remember who else is in this film. The Fabelmans. Hopefully this won't be spoilerific. Who's in the cast? Gabriel LaBelle as Sammy Fabelman, the eldest son of a family who aspires to become a filmmaker. We also have Michelle Williams, Paul Dano, Seth Rogen, Julia Butters. Okay, kind of recognize her. Judd Hirsch. Oh, sick. A lot of other people. Oh yeah, David Lynch is playing John Ford. Cannot wait for that. I'm gonna give that a standing ovation of like 20 minutes. Are you kidding? That's gonna be fantastic. Yeah, looking forward to it. But yeah, I kind of agree. This is not the best poster. But it does kind of make me wonder how much of, like, kind of here in this middle frame, for example, I think you can see, I think that's Carey Mulligan. And you can kind of see there's lights backlighting her from behind. And if this is a still taken from the actual film, it makes me wonder how much some of these set pieces or how much some of these moments are actually going to include like the film sets themselves in it as part of the image, right? Like, you know how sometimes in a musical section of a musical, the camera will pull back and it will sort of show all of the other cameras and the lighting setups and like all of the different crew members and things like this. I wonder if this film is going to play with that a little bit. I think that would be kind of cool. I'd be really into that. How are you going to do next year's AOE when people put in movies that are already in, similar to how some people put Empire Strikes Back in this year? I just delete it. I just delete it. Like I'm gonna link to the Archive of Excellence so people know like what's in there. But if they don't take the time to check, then I have no problem just deleting those choices. That's really the only way to do it in my mind. Let's see. I was pretty disappointed by the red shoes. It felt a little style over substance and not really that character driven. That's fine though, right? Like movies don't need to be character driven. Sometimes movies can be thematically driven, and that's okay. And sometimes when a film is like overly stylistic, that's also okay. Like that's one of the things I liked about the Elvis movie. It was very over stylized. That's kind of what Baz Luhrmann does. So I appreciate it when he does it, but it's also nice when, you know, other things go right as well. Like not having Tom Hanks talk about Christmas sweaters all the time. Looks like Preston's here. What's up, Preston? We're filling out the Archive of Excellence final ballot right now. Link in the description box below if you want to do it yourselves. So I'm looking now at Best Film 1950 to 1959. Nominees are 12 Angry Men by Lumet, The Life of Oharu by Mizoguchi, Ikuru by Kurosawa, Rear Window by Hitchcock, Seven Samurai by Kurosawa, and Vertigo by Hitchcock. So another category where we got a couple of doubles. Hitchcock and Kurosawa both have 2 films in this, and they're all very good films. Can't say anything bad about 12 Angry Men. Can't say anything bad about any of these films. I know that my initial instinct would be to pick Vertigo, but I think I'm actually going to have to go with Life of Oharu on this one. I think I might be the only person who picks it, but I want to give it some representation in the final. I want to give it a shot. And I think it's a truly excellent film. I think of the Mizoguchi films I've seen, which are not many, granted, it is by far the best. I think that if we were to... I think people tend to draw like the 3 masters of Japanese cinema as a triangle with Kurosawa on top. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Maybe Kurosawa was the most consistent over the course of his career, but I would take The Life of Oharu over pretty much any other Kurosawa film. Like, this film fucking ruined me, man. Ruined me. So, yeah, I think that's going to be my pick here. Looks like we got Panda saying 12 Angry Men all the way. That one has one of the best screenplays ever. Fair enough. The Life of Oharu, it'll ruin you. Preston picked Ikuru. It was just so close to picking The Line of Oharu, but Ikuru is the top 5 films of all time to me. Yeah, for sure. Like, this is a very difficult decision to make. And if Life of Oharu were not here, I'd probably take Vertigo, personally. Although Ikuru is really good. Like, very good. Like, one of the best films ever, as you said. Fun fact, according to Tom Hanks, Cloud Atlas is one of the only films of his that he rewatches. Really? Have I seen Yagetsu Monogatari? Yes, I have. I think I've seen 3 Mizoguchi films. Life of Oharu, Yagetsu, and... Ooh. Maybe I've only seen 2. I'd have to double check that. Let me see. Let me see here. Go to Letterboxd. Kenji Mizoguchi. Probably spelled that wrong. Hey, I spelled it right. So I've seen Yagetsu. I wasn't sure if I had seen Sancho the Bailiff or not. And I thought I had seen The Story of the Last Chrysanthemum, although maybe I didn't get to that screening and I just fucked up. Yeah, okay. In any case, the 2 films of his I have seen, very good. And I probably, Did I not see Street of Shame? Or The Crucified Lovers? Wait. Weird. I might be confusing that with a different film. I think I am, actually. 47 Ronin, I still need to see that. Oh my god, so many. Maybe I'll do Mizoguchi after Bergman, and I'll just watch as many as I can. We'll see, we'll see. Some people think it's weird I got to Letterboxd to check people's filmography instead of Google. No, dude. It's totally a normal thing to do. Like, I do it all the time. Letterboxd is great. Raymond's here. What's up, Raymond? Good to have you here. If you haven't filled out your Archive of Excellence 2022 final ballot, link is in the description. That's what I'm doing right now. And then we're going to talk about some film news. Preston, you haven't seen Vertigo yet. I mean, watch Vertigo. Definitely watch Vertigo. It's a film that maybe needs some context, but I think it's great. Raymond, you're saying Citizen Kane is the greatest movie of all time? Well, if you wanted to get it in, like me, you should vote for it. Right there. Okay, so I'm done with 1950 to 1959. Yeah, you can tell Tom Hanks didn't watch his performance in Elvis at all. I mean, someone should have said something, you know? And I mean, that might have been... You have to remember here, like, actors and actresses do not come to their performances, like, by themselves. They are working in concert with the director to figure out the best way of approaching the material and that kind of stuff. So, Tom Hanks' performance is being informed by Baz Luhrmann, right? They are collaborating on that performance. So it's not just all Tom Hanks. All right, 1960 to 69. First year that we get Kubrick in, and I think he's in the next three. So what do we get? 2001, A Space Odyssey by Kubrick. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly by Leone. The Graduate by Nichols. Night of the Living Dead by Romero. Psycho by Hitchcock, Dr. Strangelove by Kubrick, and Zed by Costa-Gavras. And I am so happy that Costa-Gavras got in. Over the moon that Zed is here. And 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of the most important and best films ever made. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is an epic western, the last film of the Man with No Name trilogy. Once again, one of the best films that's been put to celluloid. The Graduate was a big film in terms of getting away from the Hays Code, opening up what was possible in American cinema in the late 1960s. Remember how I talked about Rosemary's Baby and how it was so strange to see like nudity and satanic chanting in 1968? I don't know if that's in a film if The Graduate doesn't come out in 67. And then you have Night of the Living Dead, and maybe one of the most important... I mean, it's definitely one of the most important horror films of all time, basically launching the zombie genre. Psycho is not from 1968, it's from 1960. I put that in wrong. I'm sorry, everybody. It's in the right decade, though, so yeah. Maybe I'll fix that in a second. And then Dr. Strangelove, another one. Great one by Kubrick. But I'm picking Zed. This is a top 5 film for me. And I think it is I hate to say underrated because I don't think that's actually a thing. I don't think films being underrated is a thing, but I do wish that more people would see it. And I think Preston's saying that they also voted for it. So good. That's 2 votes for Zed. And if you haven't seen it, please go see it. If Lawrence of Arabia was in, that would have been a debate for you. Oh, between that and The Good, Mad, and the Ugly? Yeah, both epic films. Have you ever seen Orson Welles' F for Fake? I don't believe so. I probably need to see more Orson Welles films, honestly. I think I've ended up over my life focusing more on the films he acted in as opposed to the films he directed, which is strange. Let's see. I've been looking to watch Vertigo as soon as possible. I mean, you should be able to rent that from a library fairly easily. I would hope. Tom, you are a fan of F is for Fake? Nice. Zed definitely needs to be seen by more people? Oh, I agree. Whoa. You think movies can't be underrated? I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm interested as to what this idea means. Yeah, so I think in a lot of cases when people say that a film is underrated or overrated, what they're actually saying is that the amount that other people like and respect it doesn't line up with the amount that you like and respect it. It has nothing really to do with it being underrated, right? It has more to do with it not being as well known, and that to me is not what underrated is supposed to be, you know? So if I say a movie is overrated, I mean, I think that people have rated it far too highly, right? And if I say that the movie is underrated, I feel like people have rated it far too lowly. But in the common vernacular that we use now, I feel like it more, when you say something is underrated, you're more saying, there's a movie out there that I really love that no one has seen, therefore it's underrated. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's rated low or poorly. It just means that people haven't seen it, which to me is different things. Which is why I say it's kind of like, it's not a term that I like to use, because I think its meaning has kind of been lost in the shuffle. It's what I feel about Star Wars, so overrated. I mean, there are certainly a couple of Star Wars films that are overrated. I think the original film quite earns its stripes. Excuse me, its stripes of quality. So hello to everyone who's just joining in. If you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm going to be talking about the film news soon. But right now I'm filling out my ballot for the Archive of Excellence. That is the community-based Hall of Fame for films that we do here on Cinemateq. So this is the final ballot. There's a link below in the description box. Please fill out your own ballot and help us decide what film should be going into the Archive of Excellence next. But is like a crime to say you don't like classics? Yeah, underrated and overlooked are two different things. Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. That's actually a much better way of talking about it. All right, 1970. This one's going to suck. So we've got Alien by Ridley Scott, Apocalypse Now by Francis Ford Coppola, A Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick, The Godfather by Coppola, Jaws by Spielberg, Star Wars by George Lucas, and Taxi Driver by Martin Scorsese. And for those wondering, Star Wars, before it was a Star Wars A New Hope, Episode 4, whatever, was just Star Wars. So here, it's just Star Wars. There are incredible films here. Kubrick, once again, getting in. I don't think The Clockwork Orange is his best film, but I think it's probably one of his more notorious, considering the ultra-violence that permeates it. The Godfather is held up as one of the best, if not the best, American film ever made, but I think that's a bit debatable, because of course it is. Jaws basically is the first blockbuster. Star Wars is the next blockbuster, and very much shifted the focus of science fiction away from what 2001 kind of set up when it was released. If you look at science fiction, the history of science fiction is kind of fascinating. If you look at the progression of it, science fiction was mostly kind of B-movie fodder, like not big, super awesome movies. And then 2001 came along and it kind of solidified science fiction as a kind of intellectual genre. And that very much continued. And a great way of seeing that progression is looking at the first Star Trek movie in the motion picture. You can tell that they made their film based on the 2001 A Space Odyssey template. And then it did decently well enough. And I believe it came out in 79, so I think it came out after Star Wars. But then Star Wars did so well at the box office that even by the time you get to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, you can tell they're starting to embrace more of that Star Wars style of sci-fi storytelling, focusing more on action and characters as opposed to these sort of like larger, heady, intellectual questions about the nature of existence and etc. So it's kind of an interesting, point by point by point by point. All of that said, I'm voting for Apocalypse Now. Out of all of the films in my top 4, it's the only one that's here. I have talked about this before. I think it's an absolutely audacious film. They literally don't make films like this anymore because studios won't allow it. They just can't afford the financial risk. And you will likely never see another film quite like it. As much as each of these films are unique, Apocalypse Now succeeds on all levels, all possible levels, and not even like the Redux cut could possibly slow it down. It is a monumental achievement in filmmaking, in my estimation. So, let's see here. For Preston, underrated can mean highly rated, but nobody has seen it. The Company of Strangers or Lost have seen it, but way too low. Hunchback of Notre Dame. Yeah, I mean, once again, it's going to mean different things to different people. I'm going to just try to avoid using it because I feel like it's being used in a weird way these days. I go by the original names of Star Wars because I'm pretentious, and if someone needs clarification, I use the current names. Yeah, I mean, in these situations, communication is key. When you're when I'm talking to people, when I'm talking to people about Star Wars, I will refer to the 1977 film as A New Hope, because that's just so much more easier to communicate to people what I'm talking about, which film I'm talking about. But in these instances, when we're talking about like official titles and like ballots and things like that, I will use the official name, which I know is kind of a stupid thing considering like there's a couple of Japanese films here. Like, this is not the name of Seven Samurai. Its Japanese name is Shinichi no Samurai. And so I've anglicized this stuff, which I hemmed and hawed over, but there were so many English language films here already that I just decided to go English for everything. And I think more people would know what it is. Like, if I put in Shinichi no Samurai here, I probably need to put in brackets Seven Samurai anyways. So, yeah. A little bit more inside baseball for y'all. Apocalypse Now shot right into my top 10 films, as well it should. Also, Josephine, you watched X-Files episode 4 today. Nice. I mean, you're going for dinner right now, but tell me what you think about X-Files when you come back, because that show rules super hard. All right. 1980 to 1989, and then we'll be on to the film news after we do 90 to 99, of course. This is another tough one. So we got Aliens by James Cameron, Back to the Future by Robert Zemeckis, Blade Runner by Ridley Scott, The Breakfast Club by Hughes, Raiders of the Lost Ark by Spielberg, The Shining by Kubrick, and The Thing by John Carpenter. Oh boy. All right, so I can tell you right off the bat that for me, it's not going to be Aliens, and it's not going to be Back to the Future, and it's not going to be The Breakfast Club. So that then just leaves Blade Runner, Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Shining, and The Thing. All of these are incredible films for very different reasons. I think the practical effects in The Thing are close to unmatched in the history of film. I think that it actually marked a bit of a stylistic change in terms of how Carpenter approaches storytelling, especially if you compare it back to Halloween. It's a stark difference in telling a story, but it's so good at building up the themes of isolation and mistrust and paranoia, and all of the characters just super work well together. Like I said, the SFX is incredible. Like, my God, so good. Then you have The Shining, top 2 horror films of all time, right up there with Halloween. What Kubrick did in this film is monumental. I still think there's a bit of a stain on it because of how Shelley Duvall was treated during it and how basically this film kind of ruined her life. It traumatized her, certainly. Not a fan of that. Raiders of the Lost Ark, probably the best adventure film ever. And certainly one of Spielberg's best, so you can't ignore that. And then you have Blade Runner, the film that I have said for a long time is my favorite film ever. And I'm not going to change that now. I love Blade Runner. I love Blade Runner a lot. From a stylistic standpoint, from a production design standpoint, from a story standpoint, there are so many things that Blade Runner does first here, or not first, but does to such a high level, to such a high degree that it cannot be ignored. The rub on this, I will admit, is that when I say Blade Runner is the best, I'm actually talking about the 1992 director's cut. But, it's still based on that 1982 film, so that's why I'm putting Blade Runner in here and not in the 90s, because of course it initially came out in 1982. So yeah, I'm not talking about the original cut of Blade Runner, I'm talking about the director's cut of Blade Runner, which most of the footage came out in 1982. Yeah, that sounds right. That's how I can justify it. But certainly a lot of great films here. I will admit, and I see that Panda, you're saying Aliens all the way. Aliens was one of my favorite films when I was much younger, and then as I grew up a bit, I liked it less and less as time went on. And weirdly, one of the reasons why I'm not that into it today is that when the Aliens quadrilogy came out, the Blu-ray or DVD version of it that was like I've raved about how Alien looks in that set. Like, that restoration is flawless and incredible, and I think should still be held up as the standard for visual quality when it comes to restorations. And then in that same set, the Aliens restoration looks like shit. Like, it looks terrible. Absolutely terrible. It may have something to do with the source material. Maybe I remember there being way more grain in the images for Aliens, and maybe that grain wasn't able to be handled at those lower bit rates that would have been on like a DVD transfer. Maybe. Did I have it on Blu-ray? I can't even remember. But yeah, that was one of the reasons why I'm not as hot on Aliens as I was when I was but a wee lad who was watching the extended version on VHS, and I think I bought it at a grocery store too. Wild times back in the day. Wild times. All right. Last category, 1990 to 1999. We've got Fargo by the Coen brothers, Fight Club by Fincher, Goodfellas by Scorsese, The Matrix by the Wachowskis, Shawshank Redemption by Darabont, Silence of the Lambs by Jonathan Demme, and The Truman Show by Weir. Peter Weir? Is it Peter Weir? Or is it a different Weir? It might be a different Weir. So, Fargo won a lot of Oscars. Fight Club was a cultural like lightning bolt, which led to a lot of people beating the shit out of each other, and it also happens to be quite the apt criticism of capitalism. Although I think a lot of people miss that part of it. Goodfellas often held up as one of the best mafia films of all time. The Matrix was a hugely influential action film from the late 90s, basically set us on the course of what action films would be for years to come after that, and its influence is still being felt today. Not only that, but it had an influence in music, had an influence in video games, just another lightning bolt of a film, but in a bit of a different way than Fight Club was. Shawshank Redemption, I think this film's a little bit overrated, personally, but once again, I haven't seen it in a long-ass time, except for when I watched like a bit of it at a bar when it was on. If you're in the Discord, you would have known about that. And then we got Sounds of the Lambs, which is another huge Oscar winner, one of the last films, if not the last film, I can't remember if it is for sure or not, that won Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Director all in the same year. All Big Four awards. It's rarely done. And I believe Sounds of the Lambs was the last one to do it. And then we have The Truman Show, what some point to when they say that Jim Carrey is one of the best living actors going today. This is the film that they point to. And it's hard to argue with that. But it's also, in my mind, not hard to argue with the fact that Silence of the Lambs is the best film on this list. I think this film is the culmination of everything that Demme was working towards over his last previous films. If you ever watched his other stuff, let me just make sure I got the names right. Jonathan Demme. He did Philadelphia, right? I'm thinking Philadelphia. Wait, Jonathan Demme died? Oh, yeah. He did Philadelphia after. Excuse me. But yeah, if you look at stuff like Married to the Mob, like the DNA of the cinematography, and that has to do with the fact that Jonathan Demme was using the same cinematographer in a lot of these films, but the DNA of how Silence of the Lambs looks is in some of these earlier films. So he's actually a good director to kind of chart the progression of their career, because you can see certain elements creeping in, like in, I believe, Married to the Mob, there are some of those like straight to camera shots that where the actor's looking right down the lens of the camera that eventually make it into Silence of the Lambs during those iconic scenes with Clarice and with Hannibal Lecter. And then once again, those same shots show up in Philadelphia as well. I didn't know that he directed the Manchurian Candidate remake. Man, I should probably go back through some of these. Rachel Getting Married is pretty good, actually. Oh, and he did Ricky and the Flash. I didn't know that. Caged Heat. I feel like I should... Oh, was he doing... Oh, he started with Roger Corman back in the day. Gotcha. Right on. Who is the cinematographer I'm thinking of? Tak Fujimoto. So yeah, he worked with Demme on Caged Heat. Like, that's Demme's first film. Who else did he work with? Yeah, like he worked with Demme on Last Embrace, on Melvin and Howard, on Something Wild, Married to the Mob, Silence of the Lambs. Nominated for a BAFTA for Best Cinematography. Absolutely criminal that he did not get nominated for the Academy Award for that. Absolutely should have. And then what else did he do? He did Philadelphia. Did Beloved. Did The Sixth Sense. The Replacements, really? That Keanu Reeves movie? No way. Oh, he shot M. Night Shyamalan, or he shot Signs as well. A couple of different M. Night Shyamalan films. Great career. Wait, is he dead too? Is that why he stopped? No, he's just super old. Gotcha. So yeah, Sounds of the Lambs. There we go. So, let's see what chat's saying. 80s was the hardest year for me by far. I just had to choose the film that meant the most to me because The Thing or The Shining or Blade Runner could have all been my choice. Fair enough, fair enough. I went with Truman Show. I just like it a lot. That's a good way of picking it. That's pretty much how I did it. I feel like the 90s is personally a hard decade to contain a limited amount of films as best of the decade. I mean, that's true of all of these, though. Like, one of the things I noticed when I was going through this list, for example, looking at, well, I mean, the 60s aren't a good example of this. So, like, yeah. What's a good example of this happening? 70s, maybe? So, yeah, I guess maybe the 60s are the best way of doing this, because you do have, like, you know, Psycho, which actually came out in 1960, not 1968, as I mentioned, and you have Zed here, and the filmmaking styles between Psycho and Zed, like being released almost 8 or 9 years apart, are night and day. Like they are very different films. Zed has much more of a documentary feel to it. Psycho feels like an old Hollywood film. And then if you're taking Psycho in comparison to some of these other films as well, like Psycho compared to The Graduate, once again, is night and day. Like the way that films are being made from the early 60s to the late 60s is there's such a huge divide between them. Whereas in the 90s, you're really here, the filmmaking styles aren't as different. What you're really looking at is the adoption and almost near mastery of CGI from the early 90s to the late 90s. So, for example, like Fight Club has some CGI in it. A fair amount of computer effects were used in that film. Also, The Matrix, obviously. And so when you look at like Silence of the Lambs, which has no special effects in it, at least no computer-generated effects, to The Matrix, that's the big change. Basically, no CGI to CGI from the beginning of the decade to the end. And then I'm trying to think if there's like a good way of talking about the 80s in that way. Although there's no late 80s films here, so that one's a bit harder to pin down. But yeah, the evolution of film is incredible. I was actually thinking about this last night, in terms of how quickly the medium matured. And a lot of that actually had to do with me thinking about like what I was going to pick in these different ones. So actually just go back to this really quickly. As I mentioned before, the tables turned on The Gardener, 1895. I've mentioned that that's like, to me, one of the first films that ever had a story in it. Gardener's watering the plants. Little kid comes up and like plays a prank where he closes up the puts a knot in the hose. And then the gardener's like, hey, why isn't my hose working? And then the hose gets opened up again and he gets sprayed in the face by the water. It's basically a practical joke, but it is one of the first films with a story. And then 7 years later, George Méliès comes out with A Trip to the Moon, which is like a 20-minute film with multiple sets, multiple actors, different locations, like literally has people shot to the moon in a cannon. Not literally, but that's literally what happens in the film. And like to go from one to the other in 7 years is mind-blowing to me. And I was trying to think of an analog for it in other art mediums, and I couldn't really come up with a good one, right? Like if we talk about painting and we want to go back to cave drawings and cave paintings that were discovered in caves, in 40,000 years ago or whatever, I feel like if we're talking about the maturation of a medium, like imagine going from like cave painting to what would be a good, like kind of crude, not crude, I don't want to say crude, like cave painting to frescoes in 7 years, like the frescoes that you would find in ancient Greece and ancient Rome. Probably not the best analogy, but like imagine that. Going from something that was done 40,000 years ago to something that was done like 2,000 to 2,500 years ago in the span of 8 years. That's kind of what we're talking about with the maturation of film and how quickly it happened. And then you can see it decade by decade, like how these films are getting bigger and better. Another great example here is the 1910s. You know, imagine, like we saw. I mean, I don't know if you guys all would have been here when we watched Story of the Kelly Gang, but imagine going from that 1 hour film where the cameras barely move and there are just really long shots of people talking, and it's a silent film, don't forget. Imagine going from that to Griffith's Intolerance, which is one of the most epic films ever made in 10 years. Like, they did a cut-in the Story of the Kelly Gang, where you had a wide shot and you cut into a close shot, and that was like the most advanced film technique that they used in that film. And then in Intolerance, you have thousands of extras, massive sets, absolutely ridiculous levels of coordination needed, and that's 10 years. That's 10 years of maturation, once again. Like, it was just coming so fast and so quick. It was ridiculous. And so kind of the ending point on this that I wanted to make when I was, or at least this is something that I was thinking about last night when I was sort of putting together this idea of the maturation of cinema and how quickly it's kind of happened, it kind of occurred to me that there's a potential, there's a chance that we are still in the cave painting part of film, right? Because we've only been at it for about 120 years, there's still a chance that we're still just doing, in terms of what is possible with the medium, we're still just doing the equivalent of drawing shapes on a wall, which makes me optimistic for what we may end up getting in the future. And of course, like, it's going to be impossible for us to even understand it as such, because if it ever gets to a point that we would say it's so far beyond that we're getting into, like, you know, once again, to use the painting analogy, into the Renaissance and into that kind of stuff, we're not going to be around to see it. But where do we go in the next 20 to 30 years, or 40 years, 50 years? Look at how much Disney has changed the way that films are made just by being successful with their blockbuster, with their way of building and shooting and creating blockbuster projects year after year after year. Does that stick around? Does that fall away? And if it all fails, if the MCU and the lessons learned from the MCU all fail, what are we left with? That's wild. So, yeah, we will see. Trip to the Moon is a must-watch. It's incredible. Yeah, once again, it's just on the internet for free. You can go watch it for free right now. I went with Cleopatra because that's the one I am most likely going to watch first on that list. I've heard of the others, but, like, is that the one I should start with in the 10s? In the 10s... I mean, if you've never watched Chaplin, you should probably watch Chaplin. I put Cabiria because I didn't want to give it to Griffith, even though I think Intolerance is probably the superior film. I just don't want Griffith in the Archive of Excellence, but I'm not going to say no to Intolerance like I was going to say no to A Birth of a Nation. Cabiria, I think, is a good example of the sort of epic nature that films were taking, the sort of that progress was happening. But then Chaplin kind of represents the opposite side of that, where films were still being very character-based, character-focused. I believe both The Rink and A Dog's Life are films that involve Chaplin's main character, the character that he played most often. So, yeah. I mean... And also, I'll say, like, aside from Intolerance, I think all of these are somewhat short. Like, I don't think the Cleopatra is that long. I know Kabiri is, like, only maybe an hour to an hour and a half. It's epic, but it's shorter. A lot of the early Chaplins only tend to be, like, 10 to 20 minutes. I'm not sure about A Dog's Life in the Rink. And Dante's Inferno, I think, is only, because it's from 1911, I think it's probably only 30 minutes to an hour. So, whereas Intolerance is, like, 2.5 hours long, or longer than that. It's quite girthy. So, yeah. I think for some of these, you could probably knock them off fairly quickly if you wanted to watch multiple of them. Hey, Rocco just got fed. And he's already scarfing it down. All right, I'm just going to double check to make sure I actually have everything here that is selected. Frankenstein, Citizen Kane, Life of Oharu, Zed, Apocalypse Now, Blade Runner, Silence of the Lambs. Yep. That is a very TJ final ballot. Now, I'm actually going to go back to this view, and I want to see how many of you have actually filled out your ballots, because now I'm going to shame you for having not done it. Just kidding. I'm not going to shame you, but I still want to see what it is. So we now have 3 response. No, that's not right. What? We started with 3 responses. How are there only 3 responses? There should be 1 more. I just put mine in. What is this nonsense? Did it not count mine? Do I have to do it again? I did mine when you sent it in the Discord. Okay. Oh, you didn't submit yours yet? All right, that's fair. I'm just wondering where mine is. Why is the one that I just submitted not being registered here? It's annoying. Hold on. Hold the phone. I'm gonna figure this out. By the way, everyone, because tomorrow is first day of TIFF and it marks the very first day of a very long 11 days for me, I probably will not be streaming that late tonight. I'm going to show you something that I think you might want to check out, though. It'll be happening a little bit later tonight. Yeah, okay, so submit. Your response has been recorded. Okay, it better be. Or else I'm going to be pissed. Oh, 4 responses. There we go. All right. Let's take a quick look at these and see how we're doing. All right. I'm not gonna tell anyone anything because I don't want you to change your votes. But interesting. Ooh, interesting. Interesting. Ooh, 5 responses. Someone just put in their other one. Okay. Now I get to see how this is really gonna start going. Ooh. Ooh. You guys aren't gonna know anything about what's going on here. I'm just gonna be going like, ooh. Oh, interesting. That one's actually. I mean, yeah. I guess that kind of makes sense. Are you guys able to fill in the blanks of what I'm talking about? Okay, okay. That's a bit tighter than I thought it was going to be. That's a bit more wide open than I thought it was going to be. Ooh, yeah, I have a feeling that's the one that's going to get it. Wait, is that one? No, wait, what? Oh, nice. Nice, right, because there's only 5 votes. Right. Oh, fascinating. Fascinating. This must be so interesting for you guys, hearing me just say these words out loud. I disagree with this. Oh no, I kind of agree with it. It's not what I wanted, but it's better than what I was thinking it was going to be. And oh, right on. Alrighty then. So, let us now. Sorry, Preston. You're not gonna know. You're gonna know when the final tallies come out. Dreamboy is here. What's up, Dreamboy? Hello. Just so you know, I was just filling out my Archive of Excellence 2022 ballot. Link in the bottom below if you want to let us know who you think what you think some of the best films of all time are. You can go down, check out the Google form, fill in who you think is the best films of all time. Please do join in on the fun. And when is that? I honestly don't know when I'm going to close the voting for this. It's going to be after TIFF, certainly. So I'm thinking maybe it will be like September 25, I don't know. Maybe September 28th. And then that will give people 1, 2, 3 weeks to finish it off. And then maybe the award ceremony will be the Wednesday afterwards, October 5th, or maybe I'll do it on September the 30th on the Friday to give it its own special night. I don't know, but I would say it's at least going to be a couple of weeks. So please make sure to share this around. I'm actually going to put a link for this out on Twitter right now. Oh, I didn't tell people. Shit, I didn't tweet out that I was live streaming. God damn it. Basic stuff, TJ. What are you doing? What, are you going to a big film festival tomorrow or something? Yeah. You ate 10 donuts? Like 10 Timbits or 10 real, like, big-ass donuts? because the most donuts I've ever done in a sitting by myself, I think, was 6. I think 6 is the most I've ever done. I don't know if I could do 10. When you say big ass, do you mean like Krispy Kreme or like the specialty ones that are bigger, were they cream filled? Like, also, why did you eat 10 donuts? Why 10 and not a dozen or half a dozen? What was it about those 10 that were so tasty? I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot of sugar. I'm not gonna lie. Although I did just recently start watching this dude on YouTube. I think he's called Eric Electric, and he does like these incredibly ridiculous food eating challenges, like putting away like tens of thousands of calories in a day, and it's wild. It's wild. But he is like, he takes care of himself, so it's not like watching someone like kill themselves with food, unlike other people who do food content on YouTube. So there's less of that gluttonous stuff going on. Hello to everyone who's just joining in because you just got notified on Twitter that I was live. Hello, how you doing? I just did my ballot for the Archives of Excellence, the Cinemateq Archives of Excellence. It is our Hall of Fame. So you can go vote on that down in the comments, or excuse me, link is in the description box below. And if you're not a big fan of what's in there, then may I suggest putting in some nominations next time and getting your own stuff in there and become part of this community. Here's actually a question that I will put to everyone. A little while ago, I started a Patreon, and one of the things that you get as being a member of the Patreon is access to the Cinemateq Discord. And one of the things that I've noticed by making that decision is that new people joining the Discord has obviously dropped off because people are not just finding it and joining the conversation. The conversations are still good, and I'm not saying that the conversations are like stagnant or anything like that. I love what's going on in the Discord right now, but I'm thinking that maybe the Discord should be opened back up to everyone, and then people who donate to the Patreon at even the most basic level will have like a different kind of thing supplanted into it instead of having Discord access. Something like having your name at the end of every long form video that I put up on YouTube, as an example. To the people, and I think there are a few here who are like patrons. Thank you for being patrons, by the way. How would you feel about that change? Is that something that you think would be a good idea? Would you want to have more people joining the Discord at a higher pace? Something to think about. And you can let me know in the chat as well. I know I feel like I have to fart. Yeah, I mean, you probably would have to fart after eating 10 donuts, my man. Just be careful, you know? That's an easy way to develop an eating disorder, you know? And that shit's hard to shake. Open up the Discord. I left because it got stale. Dory's here. What's up, Dory? I hope you filled out your Archive of Excellence 2022 ballot. He said, why did I eat 10 donuts? Because I was hungry and I didn't like what they had at dinner. All right. Yeah. 10's still a lot, though. Honestly, thrown up a few minutes later, but the first part is what counts. Wait, what? I once won a competition amongst friends by eating 23 donuts. 23? What? No way. That's ridiculous. I love that. Oh, it's talking about Electric Eric. It's cool to see him do that stuff, and it's good he takes care of himself, unlike some others. Nakado Avocado. Yeah, that's who I was referring to. That guy is just... Guy's a train wreck. Gonna be perfectly honest. I really hope he finds help. Alright, so let's get into some film news, and I believe it was Josephine that referenced this, but I'm just gonna tell all y'all about it anyways because it's so fucking great. Do you recognize this woman? Do you recognize her? That is Renette Rensev, the actress from The Worst Person in the World, who we have all fallen in love with because we've all seen Worst Person in the World. Turns out, she is being reunited with the other star from Worst Person in the World, Anders Danielson Lee, in a horror movie called Handling the Undead. And I could not be happier about this news. This is awesome. This is incredible. Those two might have had the best scene of last year, the sort of ending last scene of Worst Person in the World. If you've seen it, you know. And the idea of them being in a horror drama is just incredible. And it's also been picked up by Neon. So let's go through this article a little bit, and you guys let me know in the chat if you're excited about this as I am. Neon has acquired the North American and British distribution rights to the horror drama Handling the Undead, starring Oscar-nominated Renette Renciv. Renciv earned the Best Actress crown at Cannes for her star turn in The Worst Person in the World. She is joined in Handling the Undead by fellow Worst Person in the World actor Anders Danielsen Lai in the feature debut for the director Thea Hesvindal. The film about three families facing loss and grief is currently in production and is produced by Kirsten Emblem and Guri Nebi under their Inmar film banner, and also stars Bjorn Sundqvist, Bent Bornsom, and Bahar's Pars. Bahar's Pars? That's a great name. The director earlier directed the documentary Agda Montebello and several short films, including Virgins for Life, which is nominated for the Grand Jury Award at South by Southwest. Nice. Handling the Undead is set on a hot summer day in Oslo, Norway, as a strange electric field surrounding the city sets off a collective migraine across town. The character-driven genre pick deals with emotions around grief and mortality and the battle of accepting what we can't control. Cool. Yeah, I'm into that. I mean, I was into that when I found out that she and Anders were going to be in a film together again. Yes. Super excited for that. I don't know who that is, so I can't be excited for somebody I don't know. Well, find out, Dream Boy. Go watch yourself, Worst Person in the World. That is a badass film right there. It'll make you feel stuff, but it's also just quite good on its own. I think it would be cool to have more people join. I don't know, maybe a Patreon exclusive chat for the patrons. We already have that. We already have a Patreon exclusive chat in the Patreon. For those of you who are in the Discord already and are like, what do you mean there's a Patreon exclusive thing? He's like, yeah, you don't know about that, do you? Because you're not a patron. That's why. So yeah, maybe based on this, I'll probably just put like a general question up in the Discord as well, just to see what other people think. But it seems like people are kind of open to the idea of opening the Discord back up to people. Have you ever seen They Them? Are you referring to the slasher film with Kevin Bacon that came out like a month ago? I have not seen that film. The early reviews for it were not that kind, so it kind of fell off of my radar because of that. Oh yeah, I have that. I thought that was just for you to ask questions, to be honest. No. It's just, if it's easy for me to communicate things to people who are patrons through that. To me, it's a bit easier than using Patreon itself. Although I do find that sometimes I still need to direct message people on Patreon, but that's no problem. So yeah. Will there be a version of the best films of 2000s and 2010s? Eventually, the 2000s will get added in. I just want us to get a little bit further away from the 2000s so people can start having... people have the opportunity to see more films from those time periods. I have a feeling that if we were to do like the 2010s, or if we were to do like the 2000s, it would be The Dark Knight. And if we were to do the 2010s, it would be like Inception or Interstellar or something like that, right? I feel like maybe we're a little bit too close to those decades for a kind of broader acceptance of like multiple different films as some of the best of the decade to take hold. And if we just do those nominations now for that decade, we're just going to end up with like Christopher Nolan film after Christopher Nolan film. And while they are good, I think that maybe they would be getting voted in due more to our proximity to those years than anything else. And I don't mean to single out Christopher Nolan. I just think that those are some of the films that people are going to kind of focus around. Although to that point, I thought Pulp Fiction for sure was going to get into the 90s nominations, and it did not. At least as far as I can recall. I don't think it did. So maybe I'm wrong. And maybe that's an indication that I am wrong. So maybe 2000s will be added next year, but I still need to think about that a little bit. So let's move on here to the next little bit of news. This is casting news. Catherine Kinnear has joined Joker. Fois et deux. Voilà deux. I don't speak French well, pardon me. Joaquin Phoenix will star alongside Lady Gaga in upcoming Warner Brothers sequel Joker, Fois deux, from director Todd Phillips and Deadline. And Deadline brings us more casting today. So we recently learned that Zazie Beetz is also in talks to surprise the role of Sophie Dumont, or Dudman, from Joker, while Brendan Gleeson is also part of the ensemble. So the cast is rounding out for this film, and I am excited to have Catherine Kinnear joining this. I believe isn't this shot from Get Out? Kind of looks like it is. Leave it to Bloody Disgusting to use the shot of Catherine Kinnear from a horror film, but hey, it's their brand. Shout out to Josh Squires for writing this up. What do you guys think of Catherine Kinnear joining this? Does this make you want to see the film more? Does it make you want to see the film less? I can't imagine that the casting of a secondary role would make you not want to watch Joker, but maybe. My expectations for this film are still low, and they will remain low. I think I'll probably try to keep my expectations low until well after I've seen the movie, because there are just so many ways that this could go right, but also go terribly, terribly wrong. But I guess we'll see. But what do we think about what kind of role she would be playing? And I think this film in particular isn't necessarily, or it doesn't suffer from the same kind of hype machine speculation that Marvel films tend to, because I don't think that there's any expectations from the audience that this is going to be a typical kind of comic book film where it's just going to be person from the comics, like all the characters are going to be people from the comic books, right? So Catherine Kinnear could be playing a completely original role, right? She could be the mayor of fucking Paris for all we know. That would be a weird casting decision, but it could be the case. Maybe Brendan Gleeson is the mayor of Paris. I don't know why I keep saying Paris. I think they're going to Paris. Maybe it's going to be in Paris. So yeah, like, I think if you say look at the casting of Brendan Gleeson, it would be very easy to look at him and say, oh, he's going to be one of like the cops. Not Montoya, but I forget what Bullock. Bullock from the first or from the animated series, and I think probably the comic books as well. Brandon Gleeson could probably slot into that role fairly easily, just because he's a big dude. He's also older though, and I think Bullock was a younger person, so I don't know if that fits. But to my point, we don't know who Brendan Gleeson is going to be playing, and we don't know who Catherine Kinnear is going to be playing, because we don't really know how much this film is going to be pulling from the comics. And based on the fact that it is like a shared psychosis, shared delusional disorder type thing based on the title, and that Lady Gaga is playing Harley Quinn, we don't really know what's going to be going on here. Maybe Catherine Kinnear could be like Grandma Catwoman for all we know, which would be kind of sick, actually. So, yeah. Fascinating to know what you guys think about this. But for me, still feeling tepid about it. Still feeling tepid. Next up on the things that I noticed today that I thought might be interesting to talk about. Before I get to it, I'll just take a look at this. Take a look at the chat. Eli, you're saying your expectations are still low as well for Joker 2. Yeah, I get it. I'm watching BoJack Horseman for the third time. There are new jokes I notice every rewatch. I'm on season 3, and BoJack is on an Oscar campaign, and he was framed for murder. So he said something. Preston's leaving us hanging here. Panda also saying here, There Will Be Blood and Black Swan would be my picks all the way. Oh, for 2000s and 2010s? Okay. That's cool. I mean, There Will Be Blood would be a strong one, actually. I probably wouldn't be able to answer this right away, would I? Letterboxd. Profile? No. Films. TJ's Films. Decade. 2000s. Sort by average rating, highest first. What would I pick for this? City of God would probably be one. No Country for Old Men would probably be one. Children of Men would probably be one. Ito Mama Tambien, I think would actually be one of my top ones. Adaptation as well. Yeah, there's quite a few excellent films there. TJ, your thoughts on Harry Styles spitting on Chris Pine at Venice? From what I heard, he didn't actually spit on anyone. That was just kind of like a thing. But I also heard that there was a video, and I haven't seen the video, so I don't really know. This is what Bojack said. Man, this is terrible. The Academy hates murderers, though rapists get along for some reason. I was laughing pretty hard at that. Yeah. Yeah. They're pretty okay with rapists. Assholes. All of them. All right, let's move on to this. I can think this is kind of an interesting talking point, because we got Clint Eastwood here. Doesn't buy into the idea of an auteur director. And this is something that I happen to agree with Mr. Eastwood on. I don't agree with him on much, considering he yelled at a chair at the Republican National Congress in a very weird display. But he also just did a documentary talking about the benefits of a plant-based diet. So I don't know what to think of him really anymore. But on this, I can certainly agree with him. And I'm sure this article is going to tell us a lot about auteur theory, which is basically just this idea that popped out of the classical Hollywood period, basically saying that even though some directors were under tight supervision and control by the studios, and directors weren't really as important as they are nowadays, there were some directors who were able to leave their indelible mark on their films so that you could easily identify them as being the works of a singular artist. I think the auteur theory, while important, and certainly influenced the development of film theory and even filmmaking in the 60s and into the 70s. It's largely not correct, because it takes a village to make a film. And while the director is perhaps the center of the artistic vision of it, there's so much that the director is not responsible for, or isn't even aware of sometimes, that it's hard for me to think that they were always in complete control. The truth about auteurism. So Eastwood continues, citing the collaborative nature of film as the reason he doesn't buy into auteurism. Is Clint Eastwood about to agree with everything that I just said? A lot goes into making a film. I know a lot of cineastas only think of the director, the auteur theory and all that, but it's a whole group, a company that makes a movie, and it's a company that works only as well as its weakest link. I try to get the enthusiasm of everybody. That's my best trick, if I have a best trick. I try to get everybody involved. If the janitor can come up with a great idea for a shot, that's fine with me. Ooh, there is a hierarchy on sets. I don't know if a janitor coming up with a great shot would sit too well with a cinematographer. There's no proprietary interests. I try to keep my ego and everybody else's ego out of it. I mean, it's an interesting way of approaching it. And I don't know if that is, that's certainly not true for other film sets. I have worked on film sets where someone tried to pipe up and give an idea for something, and guy was a kid, part of the locations department, something like that, and the cinematographer and the director are kind of just giving this look that's the last time you ever do that. And I think part of the reason for this, and I'll just give you guys sort of the practical reason, is that if everyone gets to thinking that their opinion matters for something on a film set, then everyone will start giving their opinion on everything, and your ability to shoot what you need to shoot in a day to stay on track and on budget goes right out the window, because everything becomes this very democratic thing that just takes longer. Democracy is great. Democracy is the best thing when it's done, when it's actually practiced. But a film set, at least in the ways they're set up now, do not work that way. It would actually be kind of interesting to see what a completely democratic film set would look like, but it's not what we got now. I'm back, and I know what faute de deux means. What does it mean? I read out what it meant already. I just learned that The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is an Italian-speaking film. I thought it was an Italian film that spoke English. I knew I was Italian, but I thought it spoke English. So, this is an interesting thing that I can speak to. I can't remember specifically. I think it's true with Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. For Sergio Leone's early Western films, not early Western films, but with the Man with No Name trilogy, he would have his English actors speak their dialogue in English, and he would have his Italian actors speak in Italian, and he would have his Mexican actors speak in Spanish. And then, depending on where the film was released, they would say use Clint Eastwood's English dialogue and then dub everyone else who was speaking not English into English. And then for the Italian version of the film, they would dub Clint Eastwood, but then the Italian actors, they wouldn't dub for them. That is my understanding of how those films were made. And it's also true of Dario Argento films, like early Argento films like Deep Red. He often cast English-speaking people, but a lot of the as the stars of the show, the stars of the film, but a lot of the other actors in the film would be Italian, and they would be speaking Italian. So that's why during some of those films, you'll see that some people, when they're speaking, what is being said perfectly matches what they're saying, but then when someone else speaks, it looks like an obvious dub, and that's basically the reason. So either version is like technically the correct version, like the director version, but there are differences in that way. You want to eat flubber? That's cool. It'll make you bouncy. All right, so Clint Eastwood. I agree with you on the auteur theory. Let's go. Here's a small piece of little news. It was announced today that the Sundance Film Festival has a new festival director, and it is actually the co-founder of IndieWire. So good for you. His name is Eugene Hernandez, and now he is going to lead Sundance. I'm kind of mentioning this because I do eventually want to go to Sundance one day, but I think they've been having a little bit of trouble recently. Like, I think maybe their the last leader, president, whatever, the executive director, the new festival director. So I think the last festival director for Sundance maybe only lasted like 2 years. It's been a film festival in flux the last little while, and I think a lot of people look at it now and say that it has fallen off a bit. It's not everything that it once was, and it's not what it used to be. So now with Eugene Hernandez coming in, maybe that all changes. Maybe Sundance goes back to being one of the most significant film festivals of the year. It still kind of is, but it's just not as significant as it used to be. But congratulations to Mr. Hernandez for that promotion. TJ, how did you come up with the name Cinemateq? That's pretty simple. That's a pretty easy question to answer. Back in the day when I first was thinking about starting Cinemateq as a work project, this started out as a project at my last corporate gig. And then when I left that company, they basically let me have the rights in the channel to this whole thing. I wanted to call it Cinemateq because to me, if like Cinemateq is short for like the actual proper word, Cinemateq, the French word. I think I might have actually screwed up the spelling of it somewhere along the line, but cinema the Q, yeah. So Cinemateq. Actually, I'm going to find definition. Yeah, so you can kind of see here, the initial spelling of this was supposed to be, and I can't remember, did I carry this over? Where is, yeah, when I kind of fucked up when I actually ended up making this. So the initial way that this was supposed to be done was that it was going to be called Cinemateq, right? And I did this because it was a motion picture library or archive, which is what some of my academic training was in archival studies for film. And then it's also a small movie theater, especially one that shows avant-garde or classic movies. And back then, my focus was going to be more on that kind of stuff. So then I went to the legal department at my company, and they were like, well, you can't just call it that. It's too basic of a word. And I was like, okay, what if I just take some letters away? They were like, yeah, that's fine. So I took away the U and the E. Except, and I didn't realize that I actually did this, I also accidentally got rid of the H. So it came up being, and I think maybe I did that on purpose to make it more, to make the TEQ sound more like tech, because the TH is there, it's more like the Q, cinema the Q. So yeah, I think I probably took the H out on purpose. I'm going to say I took it out on purpose. And that made it into a unique word that would still be pronounced Cinemateq because of the way that it's, that's the way that it sounds. So that's how I got the name. I'm thinking now that I maybe should have named it something more personal to me, or maybe I should rebrand to something more personal. Because like I always thought that this channel would grow eventually into something that would have multiple people contributing to it. And so I would just be TJ from Cinemateq or TJ representing Cinemateq. But now it's getting to the point where I feel like I've become synonymous with it. So I'm wondering if maybe the name of the channel should actually be something that is, has something to do with me. Like TJ watches movies or something like that. That's a super boring name, but that's kind of what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's where the name came from. All right, next little piece of news. I'm very sorry for this horrifying image, but this is one that I wanted to talk about, mostly because the original Tusk, directed by Kevin Smith, premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, and it was one of my first screenings at TIFF, certainly one of my most memorable screenings at TIFF. And it's been confirmed, it's been confirmed that Kevin Smith is working on the sequel, and he teases a new wacky approach. What is that wacky approach? Let's find out. It was just 1 week ago that Tusk star Justin Long spilled the beans on a potential sequel coming from Kevin Smith, and now Smith himself has confirmed Tusk 2 is on the way. During the new episode of Fat Man Beyond podcast, Kevin Smith confirmed that he's actively developing a sequel to Tusk, with Justin Long expecting to return, I assume, as the Walrus. Ever since the heart attack, I've been living on borrowed time, says Smith. 2024 will mark the 10-year anniversary of Tusk. We could just leave it there and move on, but you know, I've got more story left I'd like to tell. There's a reason we left him in the zoo at the end. I always knew, as we were making the movie, I was just like, I'd totally do this again. I thought we'd have the late, great Michael Parks with us longer, but sadly he's not. But I know we got Justin. Smith continues, early on I was like, well, eventually they'll take him out of that walrus skin and try to rehabilitate him, and just like Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight Returns, he'll only ever see himself one way. When he becomes the Howard Ho character, Justin Long becomes the crazy guy who's just trying to turn people into something else. Chimera things, half human, half whatever. Last time it was a walrus. This time you'll see. Ooh. And this just goes on to talk a little bit more about Tusk. Oh, it was an A24 film. I keep forgetting that. And it earned a little bit under $2 million, which probably made it financially successful. I think that film was pretty low budget, right? Budget, $3 million. So, I mean, yeah, it probably made its money back eventually from VOD and all of that kind of stuff. What is Kevin Smith calling the upcoming sequel? He reveals that he's calling it Tusks, and the plan is to bring the film into theaters for the 10th anniversary of Tusk in 2024. Well, all right. Guarantee that's going to be premiering at TIFF in 2024, no doubt. Preston, you still need to see Tusk? Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting film for sure. Interesting film is one way of putting it. All right, next up. Anna Kendrick apparently is going to be directing a movie. Anna Kendrick's directing a movie? That's fun. Anna Kendrick sets directorial debut with true crime thriller The Dating Game. This coming from Zach Natim from Deadline. Pardon me. Anna Kendrick is set to make her directorial debut with the true crime thriller The Dating Game from Stuart Ford's AGC Studios. Kendrick will also produce and star in the flick, which is from a Blacklist script by Ian McAllister MacDonald and is based on the stranger-than-fiction true story of Cheryl Bradshaw, who was a bachelorette on the hit 70s TV matchmaking show The Dating Game, and shows handsome and funny Bachelor number 1, Rodney Alcala. But behind Alcala's charming facade was a deadly secret. He was a psychopathic serial killer. Oh, geez. I love this script from the moment I read it, Kendrick said, and while I was obviously thrilled to be playing the character of Cheryl, I felt so connected to the story, the tone, and the themes around gender and intimacy that when the opportunity came up to direct the film, I jumped at it. It feels meant to be. The support I've received already from Stuart Ford and everyone at AGC Vertigo and Boulder Light has been inspiring and empowering. So that sounds like it's going to be kind of fun. And yeah, it will be her very first film behind the lens, which is always fascinating. It's always fascinating to see what actors get up to when they get behind the camera, because they do have a kind of experience with film to that point that is far different than a lot of other people who start off as directors. Usually people just are directors. They start making their short films, then they move on to a cheap feature, a lower budget feature, an indie feature. Maybe they get into a film festival and then they get picked up for like a slightly bigger budget. Maybe they do some TV shows here and there to make ends meet, and then they're making a feature film. Like, they've just always been directors. That's usually the path. So I think an actor tends to bring a very specific kind of look and feel to their films that is more directly interested in performance than perhaps other films may be. Like the films of Christopher Nolan, as an example, are very much concerned with size and spectacle, whereas, you know, he obviously doesn't care about performances that much because you can barely hear what anyone is saying in Tenet, right? Whereas Anna Kendrick, I think, will be far more focused on those performances, far more focused on what she's getting out of her actors and actresses, because that is the realm that she comes from. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. And sometimes these transitions work really well. You know, Ben Affleck has had a pretty good directing career. It's got to be said. The guy can direct a movie. And I think, George Clooney's directed some good stuff too, right? I think he's directed some good stuff. All right. Hey, Brent's here. Can't wait for Tusk 3 and Tusk Resurrection. Nice. I mean, maybe that's where he's going with it. I don't know. All right. Sad theater news. Regal parent Cineworld files for bankruptcy. So this story actually broke like a while ago, like maybe a month ago. But now it's official. They have filed for bankruptcy. The shoe finally fell today as giant theater chain Cineworld filed for Chapter 11. The bankruptcy includes a $1.94 billion debtor in possession financing facility from existing lenders to keep things running. Cineworld expects to emerge from Chapter 11 in the first quarter of 2023, and meanwhile will pursue a real estate optimization strategy in the U.S., i.e. some closures or sales of theaters, along with engaging in collaborative discussions with U.S. landlords to improve U.S. cinema lease terms. This is kind of similar to what happened in Canada, actually. So for a time, the Canadian theater market was a bit more robust, especially when we had AMC still in Canada. We do not have AMC in Canada anymore. And essentially what happened is that AMC decided, they didn't go bankrupt, of course, but they decided that they were going to be leaving the Canadian market, which then left a bunch of theaters just there ready to go. And Cineplex came in and bought them all, which is one of the reasons why Cineplex owns like 70% of all big screen multiplexes in Canada. They've just been able to snatch up this real estate. So it would be strange for a theater company like AMC to come in and buy up some of these Regal cinemas, because obviously the theater business is not doing great in the United States, but they may feel that further monopolization would be in their benefit. And of course, monopolization is always in everyone's benefit under capitalism. Rocco, what are you doing? What are you complaining about? Nothing at all? You want to come up here? You want to say hello? Better be quick. Better be quick. Hey, no. Come up here. Don't. Yes. The cat has arrived. So yeah, I don't think we're going to get... Ooh, look at that tail. Right up there. Look at how big this cat is. There he is, right there. So yeah, I would be surprised if another big theater chain tried to pick those up. But also... It also has to be said that there is a possibility that maybe a streaming service will start picking up some of those theaters, to have dedicated theaters for their releases. I don't know if Netflix releases enough big projects for them to get their own theater chain going, but maybe this is something that Disney will start looking into. For a long time, that kind of stuff was illegal because of something called the Paramount decision that came down from, I believe, the Supreme Court of the United States in about the 1950s, that basically just said that movie studios were no longer allowed to own movie theaters because it was anti-competitive. That has gone away. That no longer exists thanks to the Trump government in the United States. So there's a possibility that a movie studio, perhaps someone like Disney that's actually making money, could start snatching some of these up, and then you're going to get exclusive screenings and things like this at Disney-only theaters. That's a possibility. Has Rocco ever met Elmo? No, Rocco has never met Elmo. I haven't seen any James Bond films. Which Bond should I watch? The Bonds first. I'm thinking Craig, because I own 2 or 3 of his films already. Don't own Spectre yet. See, this is difficult. I would love to just say to you, watch Bond in order chronologically and just go through them like that, because it is sort of a fun trip through time and you can watch the evolution of the character. Although if you're going to start cold, starting with Daniel Craig is probably the best way of going about it, because his version of Bond is like not linked to anything else, aside from the fact that M, played by Judi Dench, is in both the Pierce Brosnan and the Daniel Craig films. But like the Daniel Craig ones are like the most clean slate you can get with Bond instead of watching all the other ones, because like the Sean Connery films, they all relate together. That's a continuous story. And then I think even when you start going through it, like there's a lot of things that link some of the different Bonds together. So yeah, watch the Craig ones or just start from the beginning and watch all of them. And there's yeah. And I'd say you don't even need to watch every James Bond film, right? Like I would say watch Dr. No because it's the first one. Watch From Russia with Love because I think it's the best Connery one. Goldfinger is pretty iconic, but like Thunderball, you could pretty much leave behind. For You Only Live Twice is kind of racist. I mean, they're all kind of racist, honestly, for a long time. Diamonds Are Forever, you can pretty much skip. Roger Moore films, I think the only good one that he did, personally, was The Spy Who Loved Me. Watch the George Lansby one. That one's actually pretty good in Her Majesty's Secret Service. The Timothy Dalton, both of his films, I think, are quite good and were kind of the template for what Pierce Brosnan would do in GoldenEye, but what Daniel Craig would really perfect in his run. As far as Pierce Brosnan goes, I would say watch GoldenEye, and then not much else is worth watching from him. And then the Daniel Craig films, you're basically just talking about Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace sucks, Spectre sucks, No Time to Die, obviously watch that one. And then the other one. What's the other Daniel Craig Bond film? The one that... the one that Mendes directed. Skyfall. Yeah, Skyfall. So yeah, those are the ones that I would say go for. But there's obviously a lot of like really cool Bond films. There's just some that are... Like the ones that I mentioned, I think are the essential ones, but like for the campy stuff, you know, Moonraker is pretty campy. Yeah, there's stuff like that too. Your dream triple feature of films out this year that have yet to be released? Oh God, Triangle of Sadness. God, I'm blanking on all the films that I want to see. Glass Onion, kind of. Yeah, let's say Triangle of Sadness, Glass Onion, and... let's say Barbarians for fun. That new horror film sounds really good. Alright, last little bit of news that I wanted to share with you guys. I think I'm actually going to probably get out of here in the next couple of minutes because I just need to be rested for tomorrow. This I thought was just nice. You probably all heard that Brendan Fraser got a big old standing ovation at Venice, and he was very moved by it. He was very tearful. And Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson applauds the comeback. Because as you may recall, The Rock's first film was as the Scorpion King in The Mummy Part 2. So he owes a lot to Mr. Brendan Fraser. So let's see here. Johnson, The Rock, credited former Mummy Returns co-star Fraser for helping launch his own film career after making history in the WWE. The Black Adam actor tweeted in support of Fraser after the standing ovation for the Venice Film Festival's premiere of The Whale. Johnson said, "Man, this makes me so happy to see this beautiful ovation for Brendan. He supported me coming into his Mummy Returns franchise for my first ever role, which kicked off my Hollywood career. Rooting for all your success, brother, and congrats to my bud, Darren Aronofsky. Hashtag The Whale." And I see Panda, I see you saying this. You got The Whale, Babylon, and Triangle of Sadness in your three. I really want to see The Whale, but I don't know if I'm excited for it because I think it's going to be a pretty heavy film. Oh, and he's Canadian too, isn't he? That's pretty cool. Forgot about that. All right, last thing I do before I sign off, I want to let y'all in on... Oh, wait. What is this? Got any good Canadian beer I should try? Oh, so many. So many. Not Lost Craft. Left Field makes good stuff. So many. Left Field makes good stuff. What are the good Canadian breweries? Mascot is good. Long Slice is good. Long Slice is good. Those are all craft breweries in Toronto. This is the service that I offer for journalists coming to Toronto for TIFF. Those are all craft breweries. Some of the better. Those are all craft breweries. Go with those. It's the best I can do. So yeah, one thing I wanted to direct your attention to, everybody. As I mentioned, there is a screening of Barbarians going on in Toronto tonight. I believe it's already started. But at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, one of the, I guess, entities that is doing this whole thing is called Dream Video Division. I'll show you their Twitter here, right here. They are doing something called Midnight Dankness tonight, and they have created what is called a remix. And maybe I can.
This is the movie that Rex Reed
you guys can see
the
this,
most
right?
horrifying motion picture.
Okay, so what they do is that they create remixes of films. Yes, last year they did a remix of Candyman, which I didn't see, but it's supposed to be pretty wild. And this year they did a remix of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but they're calling it the Texas Chain Ska Massacre. And I guess there's going to be like ska music in it. I don't really know, but here's like a little trailer preview for you.
This is the movie that Rex Reed called the most horrifying motion picture I have ever seen. This film is positively ruthless in its attempt to drive you right out of your mind. It accomplishes everything it sets out to do with brilliance and unparalleled terror. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
So, I normally wouldn't tell you guys about this if you couldn't watch it, but you can actually watch it. This is the Dream Video Division Twitch channel, and I think I can put links in the chat, so I'm going to do that. So if you want to, they're going to be live streaming that remixed version of Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Twitch at 9:30 tonight. So if you're not doing anything and you want to watch something super weird and twisted and just see what some people do with films, check it out. I've only heard good things about the stuff they've done before. It's probably going to be really messed up and weird, and I think it might be worth checking out. And I see you here, Panda, saying you're going to be busy with college work. Totally get it. But maybe take a break at some point and just check it out just to see what the visual aesthetic of it is like, or how they're mixing ska in with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, I'm probably going to check out a bit of it. I'm not going to watch all of it, but because I need to get to bed early tonight. Ooh, and I got a new book today. Out of the library. La Hacienda. Excited about this. It's a gothic Mexican film about living on a hacienda, I guess. That just means house, right? The Hacienda. Excited for that. Are you excited for Wendell and Wild? I saw a bit of the trailer, so yeah, I'm pretty psyched for that. All right, everyone. I'm actually going to call that here for the night. I know this is a bit of a short one, but I need to be rested because TIFF starts tomorrow and TIFF is going to be wild. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining. I will be back 2 weeks from today. I will not be live streaming next Wednesday. And I am very much looking forward to telling you about my TIFF experience. So, and keep an eye on my Twitter account too, because I'm going to be talking about TIFF while I'm out and around, and obviously keep an eye out on my TikTok, because that's where all kinds of TIFF reviews are going to be. Until next time, I hope you have yourselves a really great evening and a really great TIFF if you're going to be participating in it in any single way. Have yourselves a good one. See y'all later.
Get off my plane.
He's looking at you, kid.
I have been, and always shall be, your friend.
The Force will be with you, always.
In case I don't see ya. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Hasta la vista, baby.